rates and the ambitions that are set for Europe, we're far from target, and it's the waste that we're producing isn't getting to the end recycling outlets as they need to. And that's the challenge that we're faced today. And so also the issue is that within all of these items, it's a real challenge because obviously, you know, we want to decarbonize and the advent of preference of electronic items, electronic modes of transport. You know, if we want to decarbonize through electrification, there is the flip side of that, that the demand that we therefore have for critical raw materials, things like cobalt and tungsten, how can we can't keep manufacturing more and more of these items. So we really need to track and identify where these items are in existing electronic items so that they can be fully recycled rather than just going out and mining more, because our demand is increasing, but the availability certainly isn't. So that's the context that we're in. But just to give you a little bit of overview therefore of the CircThread project. So the CircThread project that myself and Lucia and we have 30 other companies, we're all working together to look at the feasibility of how we can get appliances like boilers and washing machines to, for a few things. Obviously, we don't want just the take, make, use, dispose process to carry on. And there's a few opportunities to really try and address sustainability. Firstly, in terms of extending the lifespan of appliance, making sure it lasts longer, and that can be through repairability and reuse. And then therefore making sure when that lifespan has been truly fully exhausted, only then are items being sent to recycling and that they are fully recycled. And so where the CircThread project is exploring is how that can be facilitated for the use of the implementation of a digital product passport. And the digital product passport is basically a software platform where it's kind of a hub which in the same way with a passport, it tells you where you've been, where you've gone, and what permissions you have to travel. It's very much a similar thing with every product and every item having a passport. And on that passport would give you all the information of where that product came from, who made it, how, if it's been repaired, what its life has been, and therefore subsequently the sharing of information is intended to facilitate that products are kept in use for longer because there's more story and knowledge behind a product, but also information that is about that product, say from a manufacturer, can be shared with a repairer or a recycler or the consumer, so they have the information at their fingertips in an easy, accessible way that they can then make decisions of whether something's worth repairing, or whether when something needs to be recycled that they actually know where to send it and it's sent to a proper place. And then when it is recycled, that the recyclers have the necessary data for how to dismantle it or how to process it, so that we're actually extracting all those valuable materials. So the digital product passport is, it's not a physical passport, it's a digital file. And what the CircThread project has been working with over 30 organizations is how that's actually going to work and how that's going to actually physically take shape. Because a concept is one thing, but making it workable is something completely different. So myself as DSS, our part to play, and we work with an organization called ECOS as well, was we really wanted to conduct some research into understanding the repair and the reuse and the recycling sector, to understand what are the challenges around using and implementing a digital product passport, because it's all well and good saying this would be great, but we need it to work in the real world. So we did desk research, but we also talked to a whole range of industry actors just ask them what are the challenges, but also what are the opportunities in using a digital product passport. And we used that insight to write 4 papers. They were intentionally short papers. They were not meant to be long, tedious 48-page papers that no one's ever going to read. And the papers were submitted to the European Commission, really recommending, from a policy point of view, from a legislative point of view, the things that we felt needed to happen to open up the doors to make digital product passports a reality. So what the purpose of this webinar is you're very welcome, and we would love you to do is to go and download and read the policy papers yourselves. But in a snapshot of this hour, we're going to give you some of the highlights and some of the nuggets of insights that we gained from two of the papers. The first one being on how digital product passport would work in the recycling sector. And the fourth one was about the repair and the reuse sector. So, but rather than just keep it at a paper ideal world situation, what we really wanted to do was share with you today, that's all well and good, but how will that actually work for my business? What do I need to know about these digital product passports? How's this going to impact my business, and how can I be ready for that? So it's about taking that theoretical legislative concept and actually bringing it in to your working operations and how this is going to work for you in the future. Okay. So if we're thinking about, and like I said, there's a lot more detail here. I've condensed it down. So this is very much the high level insights. What we certainly found from our research in speaking to the recycling sector and looking at some of the data that was being collected is that we acknowledge that recyclers face a whole range of barriers when it comes to increasing the recycling rates of WEEE. And it's targets are set and they're purposely set to be challenging, but we're also acknowledged that for a lot of recycling companies and recyclers, they are hitting various challenges and barriers to achieving those targets. One of the key things is information, data, the knowledge of actually what critical raw materials are in a product, what are the best, how can a recycling company know what are the best dismantling and processing approaches to take if they don't know where the battery is, what type of battery it is, how easy it is to break into the item, do they have to break into it, in which case that impedes reuse or repair opportunities. So we've acknowledged there was a lot of barriers in terms of recyclers actually having that product knowledge and product data, and they had maybe very generic data, but nothing that would actually allow them to say, well, I could take this product and handle it differently because of what I know about it. And therefore, for a lot of recycling companies, I think they feel that their current practices are really struggling to cope with the complexity of some of the items coming through. So one thing that, for example, was raised was the fact that now we don't just have single electrical items. You might have a fridge, but built into that fridge might be an LED screen that is the newest, most modern thing, but therefore systems that previously recycled fridges now have the added challenge of how do I deal with an LED screen? How do I deal with the electronics of a fridge where I'm not used to handling those type of composite items? And linked to data availability, if you don't know fully what the content is of a product, knowing the material transparency, knowing from an accurate bill of materials, this is what the metals and the plastics are in that. It's very difficult for recycling companies to make the commercial decision of saying this is worth recycling, or if we process that separately, we can get a higher rate of recycling because we know what's in it. So for a lot of recyclers, they're being asked to increase their recycling rates, but they're faced these challenges. And I think certainly we've noticed that policy sometimes doesn't really support them, or they're based on legislative barriers that they're faced. So these are some of the challenges that they're facing. And so the eco design for the sustainable products regulation that was published in March 22 really acknowledges the fact that they see digital product passports as being a vehicle to address some of the challenges that recycling and repairing sector face. So you can't ask people to hit a target without understanding why they're not hitting targets. And so the ESPR regulations are very much advocating and pushing the introduction of a digital product passport as a key bridge to get over the barrier of the fact that for a lot of for more recycling to happen and to happen more effectively and more efficiently, and when I say recycling, I also mean repair and reuse, is that information is not getting to the right people in the right way when they need it. But it's not just about information being pushed out of the digital product to people like repairers and recyclers. There's also an opportunity, and which there currently isn't at the minute, for a digital product passport to allow data to flow the other way, and that actually repairers and recyclers and even the consumers, which is a big lost opportunity, is that a digital product could actually enable more data to be gathered to actually share back with the manufacturers and the people making these products to better understand some of the challenges that they can maybe address at the source through eco design and through a more intelligent design of the product. So the ESPR is very much advocating and making digital product passports as a key role in improving our recycling rates and repair rates. So how can this happen? It's all well and good, yeah, Radi is saying that, but how can this actually happen? And it's through a number of ways. Firstly, although the ESPR hasn't mandated this, it's certainly being able to have standardized material declarations. So within the digital product passport, manufacturers have to state the quantities of critical materials and actually state how electrical items need to be handled, so that if something does need to be segregated, if something does have to be handled in a different way, rather than recyclers and having to figure that out, they're already told this in a standard form that every manufacturer has to fill in this data and make it more available. Similarly, if a recycler or repairer is opening up the back of a product, how do they know which items are hazardous or what materials are in there that are valuable from a CRM point of view? So actually having a label or a color coding that is universally used and applied would mean that for recyclers, there's no guesswork saying maybe this is this, or maybe there's a fluorescent powder in here, but the knowledge of knowing what they're dealing with and therefore how to best recycle it. And and similarly, like if a recycling company or knows that there are batteries in it, if they know that something is worth pre-sorting, it gives them a power to be able to better sort and know based on material composition. And when they do have the items and they have sorted out, how much easier it would be if a digital passport will provide disassembly guidelines. And that's not just recyclers, but for repairers as well. So that if you know how something's been connected, if you know the type of adhesive or something that has been used to put an item together, it means that, say someone's trying to open the back of something to repair it, they know how to navigate that item to reduce damage, or to actually mean that they know the type of screws or connectors they need to have to then put that item back together. And as we said, that valuable information flow to say, actually, because you glued this whole thing shut, I wasn't able to repair it. Or actually, by using 42 different screws, this is not economically worth me repairing, or it's very complicated to recycle. So actually being able to give that feedback back to manufacturers is a feedback loop that a digital product passport could actually facilitate. However, I'm saying about this like amazing digital product passport, but there are some structural bones that we have recommended that a digital product would need to have. Firstly, it needs to be super easy for manufacturers, not just to put data in, but to keep it updated. We all know how quickly technology especially is changing. And the time from which a product's put in the market to when a product actually gets to end of life or needs to be repaired could be 5-6 years. So actually that data provision needs to be really dynamic and really responsive and easy to do. And I think certainly the digital product passport has a very important role to empower consumers to actually be able to share the data that they have on how they're using a product. But more importantly, like how often do we not worry about finding the manual or where the product was made until it goes wrong, until it breaks, or we need to check how long the warranty is left on something. again, making that data available through a digital product passport, not looking down the back of the sofa to find the information manual when you bought the thing 4 years ago, is meaning that customers have that data to hand and it's easy to find the local recycling centre or where the repair cafe might be. But there's no point having all this data swimming around if there isn't some uniformity. So then we need to make sure that whether there's a bill of materials or whether you're saying these are the fields you need to fill in, that it's consistent so that you have a uniform data and that all companies have the same amount of information. But we also have to be realistic. I mean, we've looked at, some of the team have looked certainly within the CircThread program of even where to position, if you're going to access a digital product passport, you know, how do you get into that file, you know, whether it's scanning a QR code, or you and I might be able to scan the odd item. But if you've got a massive, for a recycler or repairer, when they've got multiple items, is it commercially feasible for them to scan every single item? So that's something that has to be practical in the real world, not just in an office in theory. Which is why for us, and what the benefit of the CircThread program and for the digital product passport to carry on and be effective, we really need that collaboration. We really need that it isn't just a policy thing or a recycling thing, but everybody is able to share their views, which is why we want to make sure in this webinar is that we have some time for your input as well. Lucia.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Radha.
I'll drive if you're happy for me to do that.
I'll quickly introduce myself. I just offer my help to Radha so she doesn't have to speak for half an hour straight. So I will be just presenting 3 slides just so Radha can drink water and yes, rest for a bit of time. I'll quickly introduce myself. So I'm Lucia Herreras. I'm the technical manager of the WE Forum. We are a partner in the CircThread project as well. And we are an association of extended producer responsibility organizations. So going back to the presentation now, well, the paper, these papers that Radha was presenting at the very beginning of the slides, well, they clearly state that the digital product passport can support the reuse and repair sector, and by doing this, extending the life of products, which is one of the main goals of the circular economy strategy. And well, in CircThread, through workshops and speaking to the industry and so on, well, the paper manages to identify different barriers. And well, there are, and I think that there are some animations here. Thank you, Radha. Well, there are barriers identified from consumers, and I'm sure that you have heard this quite often, or even you yourself said that. For consumers, well, it takes time to repair a product. Sometimes it is too costly. It is worth it to just buy a new one, or it's difficult to find a repair service that they will trust, or they then don't have so much confidence in the repairs, or they have concerns on that the fault will repeat. We also identify other barriers coming from repairers, like, for example, it's very difficult to have access or to spare parts because they may not be available or simply not accessible. Sometimes the repair is too costly. Sometimes it's because of the cost of the spare parts or because they have to spend a lot of time trying to understand why the product is not working or looking for information on how to repair the product. So probably having access to information about this and easy access to spare parts will reduce the cost of the repairs. Other barriers identified by repairers is the lack of access to faults or the lack of schematics. So in general, lack of access to information on the repair process. Thank you. So, well, the paper mentions different ways in which the digital product passport can support the reuse and repair sector, and a very relevant one is it mentions how the digital product passport can empower consumers, so making them more informed about products at the moment of purchase. So it means that the digital product passport can inform consumers about, for example, the durability of a product or the accessibility to spare parts or the cost of spare parts. And by providing this information, hopefully consumers will make better choices when purchasing their products and purchase products that will have longer lives and better design, let's say. Also, it is way easier to have access to an updatable list of repair services or reuse services rather than having access to a paper manual that may provide information that is not updatable, that you have to keep at home, and so on. So the digital product passport can provide information about the repair services, not only for this product based on the type of product, but also on where you are, on the location, or it can also provide information about the different ways for disposing a product. So again, raising awareness about different choices when to make a decision on the fate of a product. And for products that have been repaired or reused, the digital product passport can also make data readily available on, for example, the spare parts that were used or the different repairs that have been followed by the product, or even you can check if the data was appropriately removed from that product. So in general, the document promotes the message that the digital product passport can support the reuse and repair sector by strengthening the second-hand markets. And how is so? Well, on one hand, we have manufacturers that can provide access to more information not only for consumers, but also to repairers. On, for example, information on how to repair, on the different specifications of the product. So this, of course, will make repairs cheaper and faster and more available. And this information can also be helpful for valuations when we are reselling products that have already been repaired. Also, the digital product passport will allow to provide information that in the life of a product. So it's not only the manufacturers that can provide information downstream, it's also repairers that can provide information on the product, on the type of repair that was done to that product, for example, and the way of entering the information through the digital product passport can be a process that is simple and not very time consuming, which will also make life easier for repairers. Because there is this possibility to provide information through the life of the product, and this ability of the digital product passport to connect different actors related to or involved in the life of a product, like manufacturers, repairers, and consumers. Well, this ability of the digital product passport to contain information allows for feedback loops. So repairers can explain or can provide data to manufacturers and explain what was difficult for them that in the repair process, for example. And so manufacturers can use this information to make better products, design better products that will be easily repairable. And the same happens for consumers. So consumers can explain to manufacturers through the digital product passport the different parts that were not working or how they are using the product. So manufacturers can use this information again to design better products and put the eco design of products to the best situation. And I think these were my 3 slides. Radha, I hope that you managed to clear your throat and just take a
just
short
gives
rest.
the audience a chance to hear your dulcet tones than my awful English accent as well. So thank you, Lucia. It's appreciated. And obviously we will leave a section at the end where people want to talk and ask questions. So do please. So that's kind of the theory, and that's what again, if you want to, we've given you very much the highlights and the headlines. There's a lot more in the papers, so please do go onto the CircThread website and download them and have a real read of all the nuances that we've included as well. But I also wanted to bring it to the reality of how a digital product passport's really going to impact your world and your business, because this isn't something theoretical, this is something that is happening. So will it apply to me? Yes. I was just about to swear then, sorry. Absolutely. Digital product passport is going to apply to all products placed on the EU market. Obviously, there are some exceptions like food and and medicinal products, but anything that is not just what's manufactured in Europe, but also things that are being imported. And so it's obviously going to have a huge effect on global trade, having these information files that follow products and their individual products. This is not just a one report, one passport for all fridges ever. It's individual fridges by model number. When's this going to happen? Well, the first delegated acts have already been adopted. The ESPR is really pushing that they feel this is a really valuable vehicle with which to advocate for change. To highlight to you, electronics, textiles, batteries and furniture are going to be the ones that we see probably being first addressed by the Commission, probably because at the moment they are the materials and the items that are probably the more challenging to recycle. Obviously, paper, plastic, wood, glass is all we have very established systems of recycling, but I think these are all quite complex, highly used, big volume items that are where the Commission is focusing, and there'll be more delegated acts coming out annually, and certainly there'll be at least 30 by 2030. So this is something that we do really need as a business to be ready for. So how's this going to impact you? How's this going to affect you? Well, I think this is it's a really exciting opportunity. Please don't look at this and think, oh my word, this is going to be like a huge headache. It's a change, and any change is a bit scary, let's face it. But as a business, if you can embrace the fact that by having a digital product passport and being ready for the implementation under the ESPR regulations, you can either be forced by compliance to make things happen, or you can use it as a way of getting ahead of the curve, making that competitive edge of saying we're already ahead of whatever regulations are going to come in place. And if you do that before your competitors, you could very much see this as a chance to get ahead of the game. Really crucially, number two, this is a really valuable opportunity to really get to know your consumer base, know who's buying and using products, know who actually doesn't just buy an item and then disappear off. This is a chance to carry on an ongoing relationship with the consumer. Because if they're telling you this doesn't work, I know you thought that would be good, but no one uses that settings, that button breaks every time. That's a valuable insight that you're never going to otherwise capture. So it's a chance to really know your consumer base. And therefore, like I said, really elevate product quality. You don't ideally want to be putting out items that are breaking frequently, actually. And if you are able to work with recycling partners to know that actually consumers are able to rely on your product and keep it in use for longer and say, well, yes, I've invested in that and I know it's going to be a relied on product, then your brand identity and your reputation is very hard to monetize, but the value that it will give you as a business will be an amazing opportunity. But to do that, you also have some things that you're probably going to have to challenge yourself on. I mean, do you have the kind of data that these digital product passports are going to be asking for? Because it is going to be mandatory to have certain data in these product passports. That form you fill in with the red asterisk that says you have to put that data in, that's what it's going to be like. So maybe knowing better your supply chains, knowing better where materials are coming from, what's the percentage of recycled content in something, because then you're being able to share that data. And my question is, if you can't get that data, what is your supply chain doing if they aren't able to give you that level of transparency? But it's encouraging the flow of data. And I think that's the greatest ambition that the digital product passport has. But to do this, you're going to have to be adaptable. You're going to have to be flexible. You're going to have to do stuff in a different way. Sustainability and compliance is going to have to become central to a business. And there are going to have to be feedback loops. It can't just be that we made a product, we pushed it out, and now it's your problem, consumer. You're going to have to be ready for this wave of input you're going to have back. And where are the feedback channels? How is your business ready to adapt and take all this information feedback that you're potentially going to have? So question yourself and think, how adaptable is your business to the demands that the digital product passport is going to make on you? But therefore, and this is why we are doing a webinar like this, is we don't want all of these conversations to happen in isolation. We really want that if you have a viewpoint or you have an opinion, there needs to be dialogue between industry and government and legislation so that the digital product passport that becomes evidenced and becomes used is practical and is viable and isn't something that works on paper that doesn't work in theory. And that's the objective very much of the CERC-led program, is to see how this is going to work in reality. But I think hopefully what it shows you is there's a lot of opportunity that a digital product passport can offer, and we're really excited about it. But there's opportunities that you can really embrace it as a business. Okay, so that's me doing my talky bit. And I'm going to really challenge you now to ask you, Lucia and I were having a chat and saying, well, actually, we wanted to share some of our insights and hopefully give you some top level nuggets of knowledge. But also, we're really keen to, in the chat function, or if you want to come off mute, that would be preferable. And we had some questions really thinking like, well, for you, those of you who are from the reuse or the repair or the recycling sector, how is this sounding to you? What are I've presented the digital product passport and its ambitions. Do you think that's something you see an opportunity of? Do you say, well, that's all well and good, Rada, but however, there's this. And for me, like the data exchange is another thing to think about. Like, how's that actually going to work for you? Do you see that data flow really happening in your day-to-day context? And then one thing I'm obviously really interested in, because we're writing another paper at the moment, actually, which is about the role of the consumer and how consumers are really going to be pivotal in the use phase of a product life, and be really interested to know how you see that working. So we've got a good 20 minutes, which is what I wanted. I didn't want you having a whole hour of me, but also too often in webinars, there's not much time for questions and comments. So I kind of like to open up the floor. Please come off mute or feel free to kind of tell me what your thoughts are on these questions. And you can give a comment on whichever one you want.
There are messages in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can see them.
I can't, unfortunately, because I'm sharing my screen, but
I can read them. Instead of a response, rather, we are getting questions. But it's good too. It's also good.
Do you know what? Let me stop sharing, because that way I can actually see everybody and it's much nicer. So
we have a question from Ghislaine Batlot. Maybe feel free to unmute and ask the question yourself if you wish. Otherwise, I can read it from the chat.
Hello.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, just wondering. So thank you for the presentation. And just wondering, well, all this information is very good to, of course, to align everybody and to make some repair. But how far would a supplier be aligned with this? Of course, it's a law, and I clearly understand that, and it will be a mandatory. But some information could be confidential, and they could refuse to share some of it. So that's the first question, and then maybe they could even ask to be paid to get access to such information. Just wondering.
I think the refusal to share information is absolutely. I think from all the research we've done in talking to manufacturers as well, not just repairers and recyclers, but manufacturers have all said, well, it's all well and good having this transparency of data, but some of this data is my competitive edge. Some of this is how I differentiate myself from my competitor. And I think that's where there is going to have to be some very specific data walls, where there will need to be a confidentiality assurance of data being shared, but also that not all data is open to all people. So, for example, a manufacturer might only let certain data be available to recyclers, but it wouldn't necessarily be open to the whole generic industry or as consumers, because there would need to be some stage gates to give assurances and to give trust that sharing data is not going to be commercially or competitively damaging. Lucia, anything you wanted to add to that? I know Rembrandt's on the call, so feel free to chime in as well, Rembrandt, if you wanted to give any opinion.
I was checking that Rembrandt is in the call, but yeah, I think it's along these lines that there will be like different rights for having access to information and different types of users and so on. So it's I think confidentiality and being able to keep the competitive rules in place, it's something that the digital product passport is bearing in mind.
Yeah, because I think it's a common concern for everybody in terms of refusal to share data. I think it's going to be, I think there is also a place where there has to be stick rather than carrot, and it would be this is a mandatory compliance situation. There would you have to put these products, if you want to put these products on the market, this is the rules of the game. Natalie, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hello. Yes, to follow the subject, effectively, we have this potential confidentiality issue, but also on the software point of view, most of the parts or any electronic parts are also supposed to be linked to a certain area. I would say we would need to version or to do also software updates to be able to reuse. And this information can also be confidential or I would say protected by cybersecurity and so on. So I think it should be important also to take this into account and see how to manage not only hardware on a hardware point of view, but also on the software point of view.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And this is where, like I say, it's really, I just love everybody, it's we don't have all the answers yet, and this is what we're working on, but it's so valuable to have your input.
Yes, exactly. I think what is really important is that the people that are in charge of developing the digital product passport are aware of these different, let's say, specificities of the situation, like data confidentiality and access to data and so on. This is the very important point for me now, because as Rada says, we are at the beginning now. We are starting with the development and the design and so on. So it's what is relevant is that the people that will develop and design the DPP are aware of this, so they can make a product that is viable and it's adapted to the needs of the market. There was the second question that from Ghislaine about if a supplier could require to be paid to share such data. And again, I think we have not lived the situation yet, and that's my personal opinion. Maybe we will see how the market evolves and how all this will turn out. In some cases, it's going to be an obligation, a legal obligation, so that should, let's say, promote the collaboration of all the actors. But well, it's I don't know if there is someone in the call that would like to comment on that.
Yeah, if I may add something, I raised my hand because I wanted to reflect on this question. So it's a very good point, and I see two important topics. One of them is the classical business model topic that we always have. If we change the ownership and the product is not owned by ourselves, but the ownership stays at the manufacturer, then the motivation for this long-living product is a very different one. So this is one aspect where the ownership is. But the other one, and I think your question goes rather in this direction. We will have mandatory and non-mandatory data in the DPP. It is supposed to be like that. And it's a very good point. I can imagine different services where this can be a very important part. It can have a very important part. So if you give your data and it's valuable and value are generated and it can be monetized, then yes, I think there will be new business opportunities, and then this can be shared.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very valuable point about the fact that I think ownership is a very interesting concept. And I guess that goes back to also like concepts of take back schemes, for example, where before typically a manufacturer put a product and it went out into the wider world. But then actually, if you then have through EPR an obligation to pull something back, and then actually maybe the ownership does stay with the manufacturer, I think you're right, that really changes the dynamic of responsibility and where does the responsibility sit, and therefore sharing of that information. I think the monetarization is something that I think is going to be maybe an evolution and something that, but I think you're right, where there's hopefully, I think where businesses start to see the business value of having a digital product passport. And I've certainly put on the slides some of the business opportunities we see coming out. But I think as they become to be the norm, I think being and showing that actually by bringing back or keeping that data flow, they've been able to make cost efficiencies, reduce the amount of fails or having to pay out on warranties. Suddenly that will become something that is a monetary benefit. So yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be a very interesting evolution process. So yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're muted, Radha.
Sorry. Blockchain has been raised obviously as a suitable technology. And certainly someone saying that they feel it's suitable. I think that as my knowledge on the blockchain side of the work, Lucia, I don't know if you know better than me, but I know that's certainly a big side of the data that we have members in the consortium looking at.
Yeah, maybe Rembrandt can't. We can put Rembrandt on the spot.
I'll throw Rembrandt under the bus if he's willing to come off mute just to answer that, because that's certainly something is probably more under Rembrandt. Sorry, is a part of the consortium, and he's certainly more knowledgeable on the data side than we are. So, in the absence of that, I was just saying, how can recyclers actually use scan, implement the DPP in their flow from a technical point of view? I assume they cannot scan every QR code individually. Any other insights to share to optimize the mechanical recycling as well as the enzymatic? I love that as a word. I've not come across that one for recycling and the role of the DPP here. Lucia, do you want to take that one?
Yes, well, on the scanning, on individual scanning of products, indeed, this has been raised and identified as one of the items that need to be solved in the workshops of the Silk Thread project. So it's been collected that in the Silk Thread project, we were having different workshops with different representatives of the industry, and this point has been raised by recyclers. So it's something that needs to be solved by a technical point of view, because so far, in most cases, we talk about a QR code. A QR code can be very useful at the purchase moment when you have a very nice, clean QR code that you can scan with your mobile phone at the store. But a QR code will not stand 15 years of the use of a washing machine, and then its transport to a collection point and so on. So it's something that technically has to be solved. Now we can hear about a combination of QR codes and RFIDs and so on. So there is work on that that it's being done by the different projects that are have been charged with developing or piloting digital product passports. But so far we cannot, at least I am not technically, I don't have enough technical background to respond with a proper solution or technical solution to the issue. But I can see two persons with a hand raised in the call. I'm sorry, I cannot see the name of the lady. It appears as a pseudonym, but feel free to please unmute and speak.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Hannah. I'm from the TU Berlin, and we are in the C-RISE project. And I see a challenge in the that actually industry partners get involved and that they actually understand the complexity of the digital product passport, and wanted to ask if you actually have experiences with piloting this with actual recyclers, remanufacturers, and how all of this works in a kind of pilot, because we see some problems working together with the methodology part and then also the hands-on experiencing it with recyclers and so on. So this is regarding the practical implementation.
Yeah. So on that, we have, as part of the Circ Thread program, we have 6 use cases where we actually have partners who are working on, they're using things, for example, like taking a washing machine and actually trying out how a product passport would work, ranging from, to the earlier point, position of a QR code or where to position it. And that opened up a whole can of worms. And then also how a consumer would access a QR code and how a manufacturer would access the QR code. And then also that another partner has said, well, okay, well, once that QR code has been scanned, what is that going to scan to? And so they've developed doing a pilot website where it would allow the repairer to actually look at a product, and based on the data of the product, how old it is, the parts, is it worth recycling? Is it worth repairing? Is it worth recycling? What is the cost point at which there needs to be some commercial decisions made? Because it might be that something is technically recyclable but not worth it. So we've certainly got 6 or 7 pilots where we're trying out in the real world how this is going to work. And then the culmination of the Circ Thread program, which will be March 25 next year, is actually to have the insights from these use cases actually put forward. Because you're very right, Hannah, without trying this out, we're going to look, there's a risk of a DPP not really being workable. So that's certainly something that why we've got such a wide family of people working on it. So watch this space.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have 5 minutes left. Do we have time for one more question, Radha?
Yes, I'm sure we do. Yes, go ahead. And thank you. I love that, we've had so many input, because that's what I really wanted. Hi.
Hi, my name is Romain Le Teneur. I'm French. Hello, everybody. Just
Hi.
regarding what we discussed, I think it's very interesting. I know that there's one experience going on in France at the moment with Group Fnac Darty, with a company that is providing already a DPP within the blockchain, because it was also discussed in the chat what type of infrastructure can host the DPP system. What I found interesting today is that you were discussing mainly the producer part, manufacturer's part, which becomes an obligation for them to host data about their products on the DPP. But we understand that lots of stakeholders are now interested. I mean, when we talk about repair, reuse, somebody talked about take-back schemes who also have an interest to capture part of the data. You have producers, of course, willing to probably enhance the behaviors and the relationship with customers. So it seems that the luxury world started to do that a few years ago already. There's an experience called Ariane. I don't want to promote something specifically, but called Ariane, which is already, at least in France and in the luxury world, working with DPP, and it's now embracing with Fnac Darty in France with one of the compliance schemes known Ecosystem in France, which is also running this program together with Fnac Darty. And I think this experience shows apparently that you can handle different rights to different users, which was one of the main topics earlier. How can you differentiate who can access to what between confidentiality and, let's say, business relationship and eventually compliance aspects? And it seems that the blockchain can enable it to distinguish or to discriminate between the different type of users. So I see lots of good and positiveness in this type of experiences. Pretty sure many more questions to come, notably with for example, for producers, the declarations of EPR topics, which still remain a big problem. But I see lots of positiveness and good trends about the project. So thank you for sharing this webinar today.
Thank you. And I think obviously just to acknowledge, we've given you a whistle stop tour in like 35 minutes, 40 minutes of months of research that we have compiled. So it would be a disservice to feel that we've tackled everything. And I'm sure we could have another 2 hours discussion. And I love the fact, thank you, that everyone's kind of given opinions and points of view, because this is what we really want. And if there's we really welcome any greater engagement, and that's why we made this webinar open to the general public, not just those partners, because obviously we're really keen to get thoughts and opinions. So I'm always feel I should have given more time to the discussion, but also I feel a service to give you some information on which to comment. Question: will the report research report be available somewhere? Fausto and the Comet team will be working with us to make sure that the outputs that we have, both from the reports from the project and also the wider report, will be shared at different levels in different ways. I think certainly what's going to be very interesting is the pilot outputs and how this is going to work, and obviously how we see the evolution of digital product passports happening. So as Fausto's put, please check the CircThread website, because there's a lot of information there, not only about the work that we're doing, but subsequent webinars and subsequent kind of events that we're hoping to. We want to share things publicly, but obviously at the right point in time when we have some of the answers to the burning questions. But it's an evolution, and so any engagement you want to offer or bring to us, we're certainly really happy to have.
And you can subscribe to the newsletter of the project, which is not only dealing with project news and informing you about the webinars and the workshops and any other activities that we run in the project, but it also provides news about digital product passport in general. So it's quite interesting to read it. And there are not so many newsletters, I promise. It's not that we will get your mailbox full. So feel free to subscribe from the website as well.
Yes, I suggest you check the website, because not only scientific papers, but as Lucia and Rada mentioned, there are plenty of information in the website in these different areas. So check the website, and if you don't find what you want, just contact us. I'm sure we will be able to send you to the right point. And then if you want to get more involved in the project, we have the stakeholders community that you can also join. It's a LinkedIn group, if I'm not wrong, that you can join from the website as well. And from there, you will have access to different questions or more in-depth information from the project. So if you want to simply follow it closer than simply receiving a newsletter. So thank you, Annie, for posting on the chat all the links for all of that. Thank you. Yeah, you can also follow us in the social media to get updates on the project results and evolution. But the main information is on the website.
Okay, thank you. Well, mindful of time, I really appreciate everyone's involvement today. And yeah, we've taken a note of the questions. So obviously, it's really great to get a vibe of what's also pertinent, or what, when we share this data, the questions that come back to you. So thank you for your time today. Apologies if we didn't get a chance to answer everybody's question, but certainly, as Lucia said, there's a lot of opportunity for further engagement. And thank you for your time today. It's been really fun. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rada. Thanks for the presentation, Lucia.
Thank you.
Take
for
care.
coming.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you for joining.
Bye.
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 Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.